The games of Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic the Gathering are remarkably similar in concepts and rules. Both involve summoning monsters and creatures to attack an opponent and bring their life total to 0. These are supported by non-creatures of various similarities. This isn't that surprising given that Yu-Gi-Oh! Began its life inspired by Magic and Dungeons & Dragons in Kazuki Takahashi's 1996 manga about a possessed schoolboy enacting karmic revenge on bullies through various violent games, of which Magic and Wizards was just one. With such rule similarities, some of the simpler cards can have a nearly one-to-one correspondence between the games. Iconic cards such as Pot of Greed and Divination both have the rules text, draw 2 cards. The best 3 words in either game. Similarly, the text Destroy All Monsters appears on Dark Hole and Day of Judgment, or more famously in Magic, Wrath of God. And cards like Change of Heart and Threaten have the same effect, although with slightly different wording. Although, even when the rules text of these classic cards are identical, these 2 cards can play very differently in their respective games, due to the mana system of Magic. Every card has an inherent cost which must be paid by mana from lands, and you can only play 1 land per turn. That means a card like Divination usually can't be cast until turn 3, whereas in Yu-Gi-Oh! Any cost would be in the rules text. No text, no cost. And a card with a cost can be much worse than a card without a cost, as a player of either game will readily tell you. So, we've got all these cards that may be better or worse in their respective games. Is it possible to port a full deck of these cards to MTG? That's the question I want to answer in this video. Can you play a Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck in MTG? Well, we're going to try. With this deck list. The first thing we're going to need for this is a deck list where all these frankly broken Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards were legal all at the same time. Luckily, way back in 2004, there was no ban list, just a restricted list, similar to the vintage format in MTG. The best deck at the time used a group of cards called the Chaos cards, and so that ban list time was referred to as the Chaos format. I'm using a historically accurate list from Lithium 2300's Cross-Ban List Cup from this year. That's a great series, by the way, seeing decks from vastly different eras battle it out. This is a port of that exact list. My rules for this, for finding the best fit cards, was that I would try to match the text boxes as closely as possible. If I couldn't find an exact match, I then tried to match the cards as they were used. What role did the card serve in the strategy? I put considerations for the card tab last. Last other than the mana cost. So we've ended up with a 4-colored deck here. If there's other stuff that the Magic card can do, I'm gonna play as if it's the Magic card, instead of ham-boning myself. But of course there are still gonna be cards for which there isn't a good fit for the deck we're going to be playing today. Some of those simply haven't been released on Arena yet. Those are the cards in the rightmost column. Then there are cards that really don't have a good equivalent in MTG at all. At least, not that I could think of. Like this one, Yatagarasu. Nothing in MTG skips your opponent's draw phase on hit and bounces itself to hand and can't be special summoned. And definitely not on Arena. For these weird ones, I'll try to explain my decisions during the gameplay as the cards come up. This one I think I nailed though, even the art's indistinguishable. If you want a full deck list that isn't broken up or moving, there will be screenshots of the deck list after this finishes, before the gameplay. Oh, at this point I probably should have mentioned that the bulk of this video is gameplay, specifically playing on MTG Arena in the historic format, in which every card in Arena starts as legal. And we'll see how well a 2004 Yu-Gi-Oh! Strategy with modern MTG cards does against the current historic metagame. I guess the spirit of the Chaos deck would have been to just play all of the best cards in the format. That would have just been the top tier Rakdos or Jund decks. But we're playing a direct port instead. I still have some time to fill, so how about a joke? Why do all the non-Sylvans seem so sad at the peak of Mount Sylvania? Because they all just scry! Now if you didn't get that, don't worry. The joke simply wasn't funny. Now getting back to the deck, a bunch of these traps do really powerful things in the context of MTG, because there the instant speed is always a boon, whereas trap cards are generally a drawback. That's why the fits here aren't great. Finally, I added lands to the deck, because 40 is less than 60, which is the card minimum. Also, being able to cast spells is better than not casting spells.
Alright, let's jump into some duels.
It's time to duel!
Ah, we meet again, Kaiba, on a new field of battle.
Yes, Yugi, you call yourself the king of games, but I've only ever seen you play one.
I'll play another land, and the Wretched Throng.
Wretched indeed. My authority of the consoles will bring it into play tapped and gain me a life. On my turn, I'll play the Righteous Valkyrie.
Your fairy is strong. I'll have to pass after playing a land.
The types are different here. This is an angel. Reading the card explains the card, but I suppose reading is too much to expect from a simpleton like you. And this turn will show how outclassed you really are. I'll start with a Soul Warden. This triggers my Valkyrie's special ability, gaining me 1 life. Then I'll play the land Radiant Fountain, gaining me 2 more life. I'll follow it up with the Steel Seraph, triggering both of my creatures. And now that my life total is above 27, my Righteous Valkyrie's second ability comes into play, making all of my creatures more powerful with a +2/+2 boost.
I'll draw 3 cards and discard 2. Your strategy is powerful, Kaiba, but that power will be your downfall, as you've fallen into my trap of the Crush Card Virus, destroying your monsters. And this one also gives me a food token. But don't worry, soon enough you'll have your own. Just desserts. Well, you managed to deal with a few of my creatures, but I've got plenty more where those came from, and they're all much stronger than your pathetic weaklings. Then let me show you some power of my own. I will reborn the monster, choosing my Imperial Order. When this comes into play, I can choose to make myself and my monsters completely immune from your creatures. You have many powerful creatures, Kaiba, but I wonder, is that all you have?
You shouldn't be able to reborn a trap card, and you should really only be choosing sorcery with it. This is some BS, Yugi, but I'll admit, you've won this one.
What's up, Jank enthusiasts? QQM here, and I am not going to do the entire rest of the video as a voiceover duel. That takes a ton of work, and I'm not going to do that. But it'll give us a chance to talk what's actually going on with the deck and some of the choices that we have. We can start by putting on our Yugioh Vision glasses and taking a look at the hand we have here, and there's a lot of spell trap removal in there, so hopefully it's useful. So, for porting spell trap interaction from Yu-Gi-Oh! Into MTG, I decided that spells and traps meant anything that wasn't a creature. And that's what Fracture does. It hits all the non-creature permanents that you can hit. So, I used the Fracture on that Cloud Key. And we also have another stand-in for Mystical Space Typhoon, and that is Duress, with the idea being that in Yu-Gi-Oh! MST destroys trap cards in the field. But in Magic, instant cards only exist in the hand, so to interact with those, you have to attack the hand. And it looks like our opponent is playing a deck that is entirely composed of artifacts. Looks like they don't have anything that requires colored mana or anything like that. So it looks like our spell trap interaction is actually going to come in quite handy. Like now, we have our Heliod's Intervention, which is our stand-in for Harpy's Feather Duster. And it would be nice to be able to destroy all the artifacts that our opponent has on the field right now. But unfortunately, we can only do X=2 here. But that does take out the Mystical Forge, which is a very important artifact that lets our opponent play from the top of their deck. Unfortunately, they get to keep 2 more, which allows them to cast this Karn the Great Creator. Grabs them any artifact from their sideboard or exile. For Sauron's Ransom, I decided that this was the closest thing to Painful Choice, in that it is giving our opponent a painful choice in how they want to split the piles, and it is the most efficient one of these currently on Arena, so that's the one that I went. It also puts all of the non-chosen cards into the graveyard, similar to Painful Choice, which would usually be used to fuel the Chaos monsters. Alright, our opponent has played a Paradox Engine, which allows them to untap all of their non-land stuff whenever they cast a spell. That means they're going to have a ton of mana going forward here as long as they can keep chaining together spells. And with Karn being able to tick down and grab whatever they want, they should be able to play another spell here. They have 6 mana. Oh, and they cast the One Ring. Oh geez. Alright, with the One Ring and the Paradox Engine, as long as our opponent keeps drawing spells, they can keep casting spells, which untaps the One Ring. The One Ring taps to draw cards, first to draw 1, then to draw 2, then to draw 3, then to draw your entire deck, basically, if you can keep on tapping it, which the Paradox Engine does, and so we might lose here right now, and that would be bad. Fortunately, it looks like our opponent has drawn a land or something that they can't cast here, so we get to live another turn, and this is going to be the fastest Hour of Revelation I've ever cast. Our Chaos Emperor Dragon completely clearing the field, unfortunately not clearing the One Ring because the One Ring is indestructible. And they draw another Paradox Engine. So their combo is back online, although they'll need some mana rocks to untap to have the mana to cast the things that they draw. But we are slamming down our Serra's Emissary. We are choosing artifacts. Our opponent probably is only playing artifacts in their entire deck, even though our opponent is showing us the combo here. One Ring, drawing cards. Ooh, and we're playing the One Ring in our deck as well. It stands in for Mirage of Nightmare. It's not really a great fit, but the idea of it is that it's a non-creature that provides insane card advantage to the hand, and it has a downside on the upkeep or standby phase. In the case of the One Ring, the downside is damage. In the case of Mirage of Nightmare, you have to discard some of the cards that you drew. And now with Aetherflux Reservoir, they're also gaining life. What Aetherflux Reservoir does is it gains life every time you cast a spell, and eventually it has an activated ability where you pay 50 life, do 50 damage to anything. That 50 damage is usually shot at our face, and we usually immediately lose. Or that would be the case if we didn't have this Serra Emissary / Imperial Order on the field, making us immune to artifacts. They can't shoot the Serra's Emissary, and they can't shoot our face. So, hopefully, our opponent cannot do anything to stop us. And it kind of looks like our opponent wants to play Yu-Gi-Oh! In that they're playing a ton of cards, comboing off all in one turn. It's basically modern Yu-Gi-Oh! This deck, not our deck. By the way, as our opponent goes through this combo, they're tapping all of their mana by pressing QQ. If you ever want to do this combo in Arena, taps all of your mana sources and adds it all to the mana pool. Although it's not entirely flavorful because it's usually your opponent that's QQing whenever you're going through this combo. Although, I look over on our opponent's field there and see a Blast Zone. Blast Zone is very bad. What it does is it allows you to tick up the number of counters on it by paying lots of mana. Then, once it untaps, you can tap it, sacrifice it, and destroy all non-land permanents with that number of counters. Our Serra's Emissary is a 7 CMC card, so they put 7 counters on it. And that land can indeed destroy our Serra's Emissary, at which point we will immediately lose to the Aetherflux Reservoir. Fortunately, in our hand we have Black Sun's Twilight. Black Sun's Twilight is our Call of the Hunted, or our instant speed monster Reborn. So, hopefully what happens is our opponent goes to kill the Serra's Emissary. We use the Black Sun's Twilight, X=7, get our Serra's Emissary back and stay immune to artifacts, and that's the hope. Our win condition at this point with our opponent at way too much life total is that they will simply deck out, okay? Our opponent is firing the Blast Zone, Serra's Emissary dies, they use the Aetherflux Reservoir, we use the Black Sun's Twilight, X=7, go to Reborn our Serra's Emissary, and Aetherflux Reservoir is instant speed, so they can just shoot us again. And we lose. Yep, that's unfortunate. So, this seems as good a time as any to answer the question previously posed. Can you play a Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck in MTG? The answer is clearly yes. I mean, yeah, obviously. With the rules that I put in place, you can play any random pile of cards. The far more interesting question is, can you competitively play a Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck in the historic format on MTG Arena? The answer to that is a resounding no. Taking a look at the statistics on Untap.gg shows a 23% win rate, and that's an unranked. Some of the games just look like this. So what you're seeing in the video is definitely a skewed look at the performance, but it's fun. What's up guys, Quandrix here. This is another game, this time against Domain Zoo. That's Domain as in 5 colors and Zoo as in they play creatures. Their strategy is going to be pretty simple in that they will be trying to reduce our life total to 0 by playing creatures and using direct burn damage. If our life total is going down, we're losing. Pretty simple, so we can focus on our deck. This first Thoughtseize we cast as a dead ringer for Confiscation, or the Forceful Sentry, only kinda. Those are some mega broken, ultra banned cards for similar reasons that we're seeing here. Getting information about our opponent and disrupting their early plays is even more broken in Yu-Gi-Oh! Following it up with Duress, which is again MST, now we have Everdawn Champion as Spirit Reaper. This was one that could have gone in a few different directions. Spirit Reaper can't be destroyed by battle. Discards a random card from your opponent's hand when it deals battle damage, and has the Phantasmal ability. The random discard is a classic on Hypnotic Spectre, but more often Spirit Reaper would be set and use its battle destruction to stall the game for a bit or provide tribute fodder. That's what Everdawn Champion does with its combat damage meter. So now that that's dead, we have Skull Snatcher as Kaiku for its ability to banish 2 cards for the opponent's graveyard. Much worse with 2 power, rather than 1800 attack, and that's part of the reason that this deck performs so poorly. In Yu-Gi-Oh! Monsters are statted such that it doesn't take as many hits to finish the game, so this deck sort of lacks that finishing power. And to further explain why the deck is so bad, is that this is a mid-range deck. And by a mid-range deck is defined as having no real win condition. It just kind of plays cards in hopes that after playing many of them, that the game will have somehow ended. They are further defined by a pilot's belief that their cards are better than their opponents, and that all interaction will eventually result in 2-for-1s, small card advantage that snowballs to victory. The issue is that that strategy works best in low power formats. With the power creep of both Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic, it becomes increasingly less viable. Modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Is all about making unbreakable turn 1 board, tons of negates, and then winning the following turn. And modern Magic philosophy is moving towards never running out of stuff to do. You can't 2-for-1 your way to an empty opponent's board anymore. In summary, the only reason this deck performs poorly is due to 2004 strategies no longer being viable, and not due to my skills as a deck builder or player. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I will be taking no questions. Now, if you return your attention to the screen, you may notice that a game of Magic is being played. Alright, to cover some cards that have been played, Cormella is Magician of Fate. It gets back instant and sorcery cards similar to spell cards. It gets them back when it dies, and Magician usually dies when it's attacked, in order to activate its flip effect. Then we have Squee, Sinister Serpent. I can't get the more appropriate Squee on Arena, so this one that always can come back into play will have to do. Unfortunately, they keep drawing gas instead of the land that they need, so I have to go ahead and steal the Spellbreaker. The Grafted Identity was originally something close to Control Magic, in that there was no sacrifice or buff, Thralling Hold, but that card was just so awful, I had to switch it. At this point, we have a good old-fashioned beatdown of a game here. My decisions on how much damage I thought I could take were maybe a bit suspect, but I don't have much in this deck that can deal damage, so I was trying to use their Gruul Spellbreaker to get more of that. Our opponent now casts a Bloodbraid Elf, which allows them to spin off the top of their deck until they hit a card that they can cast. And they hit a Tribal Flames, and they decide to shoot down my Cormella. I get back Thoughtseize, which isn't great. At least it can rip the Oliphant out of my opponent's hand. And my opponent here attacks with the Nicodle. And my opponent here attacks with the 2 Nicodles and the Bloodbraid, and not the Voice of Resurgence for some reason. Okay. While this is going on, I can defend some of my more contentious picks for cards. For Torrential Tribute, I use Flame Sweep because there aren't many instant speed destroy all creatures in MTG, and this one at least has the potential to destroy all creatures. Blackluster Soldier, Envoy of the Beginning, is one of the most iconic cards in the Chaos deck, and we won't actually see it in this video. It's one of the eponymous Chaos cards because it summons itself by banishing a light and a dark monster from your graveyard. Light and dark mixing is chaos. There are only a few creatures in MTG that require exiling creatures to cast, and BLS's main role was as a finisher and a boss monster, so I went with Vona, Butcher of Magan, over any of them. Vona has a point and kill a creature ability, which I think lines up well with BLS's banish target creature effect. And Vona is a boss monster, a must-answer threat that can finish games. Also, it's black and white for light and dark. See? Chaos. Finally, there's Sangan and Witch of the Black Forest. There aren't that many creatures that search on death in MTG, especially not generically, so I went with Wretched Throng as a card that can at least search the other pair. I have Battle of Bywater as Crush Card Virus. It's nice that I can get some food tokens, especially here, but it's not an amazing fit. Crush Card destroys all creatures your opponent controls with 1500 or more attack, which I figured 3 power was a good analog in MTG. It also destroys those big creatures in the hand, and every big card the opponent draws for the next 3 turns. Pretty bonkers, even for Yu-Gi-Oh, and there's nothing in MTG that does that, so I'll use what I can get. Let's see what our opponent spins into, and it's a Play with Fire. So the Play with Fire destroys our Squee. Bloodbraid Elf comes onto the field, our opponent's going to attack. I block the Nikatl here, letting the Cormella die so I can do the Battle of Crush Card thing again. Probably the most useful thing. We don't want to do too much damage to ourselves, and if they had something that we could Duress, they probably would have played it already. Sweep the board, get a food, keep my life total not at 0. All in day's work. Alright, just gain a food, stay at, get some more life, stay at 7. Our opponent plays a big anything. I start with Graceful Charity stand-in to draw 3 and discard 2, not really finding anything that exciting. With our opponent at 5, I wish beyond all wild hope that this Bitter Downfall was actually the card it was representing, Ring of Destruction. Ring destroys target creatures and burns both players equal to its power. This one only deals 2 damage, so we get our opponent to 1 life instead. Squeeze looking pretty inevitable at this point though. And off the top, our opponent rips Bloodbraid Elf and...
Oh, it's Lightning Helix! Oh my god!
Now we are at 1, and our opponent is at 7. But one good top deck deserves another. And it's a land. No matter, we attack with Squee. Then we wrath the board, and bring back Squee. We have inevitability on our side. Ah, nuts. For this last one, I said I wasn't going to voice act any more of these games, but consider this a bonus game!
Our last duel left a sour taste in my mouth, Yugi. Now I'll show you the true power of what money can buy. This deck is the true spirit of Chaos format. All of the best cards available to Historic in one deck. Prepare to meet your doom.
You say that like you're trying something new. How about you try new skills instead, like mopping floors? After our duels, it seems quite useful for cleaning up all your tears, Kaiba.
The only tears there'll be at the end of this duel will be tears of joy. I flash in my Orcish Bowmasters, modern and legacy staple, killing your weak creature and making another body.
Weak? Perhaps, but these throngs come in pairs. I'll add a replacement from my deck to my hand.
On my turn, I'll cast R&D Mistake, the One Ring, much more potent than intended. For the next turn, it makes me completely immune to any of your cards. And with this ring on the battlefield, for the rest of the game, I will never run out of cards with which to crush you.
That card's good. There's nothing in my hand that removes it. I'll have to stop and trust my deck.
No witty comeback? I can see you've accepted your loss. I'll draw, then Thoughtseize. I'll take away whatever hope you had left.
This game is far from over. In response, I'll use my Black Sun's Twilight
to destroy your Bowmasters. An acceptable loss, especially as you lose your removal spells. First, Bitter Downfall. Then, I'll cast Jarsel, Dark Age Scion. This card was designed for alchemy, which means game balance was of no concern. It allows me to cast Thoughtseize again at no cost. I know the power of Mirror Force all too well, so I'll be discarding your Settle the Wreckage. Next turn, Jarsil will allow me to cast a 2-drop, meaning my Bowmasters won't be gone for long.
I'm impressed with your creature, Kaiba. But you only see your creatures as game pieces, tools to be used. They have no loyalty to you, and your Jarsil's just done and about face. Now that he's with me, I get to cast the 2-drop, and I'll bring back my Wretched Throng. I care about these beautiful creatures, and that's why you'll always lose.
You say that after sacrificing it in the first place? Your words ring hollow. My ring rewards me with card draw. Blood Tithe Harvester makes a blood. I'll crack it to filter a card. And that lets me use Fatal Push to bring my traitorous Jarsil back in line. I'll attack and bring your life total closer to 0.
Just 2 cards left in hand. Maybe I'll be able to cast the Serra's Emissary next turn. That requires drawing a white land from the top of my deck, though. Part of the cards I need you. But for now,
I'll attack with the Wretched Throng.
Tell your creatures to stop standing near ledges, Yugi. This one's about to experience a fatal push of its own. Ha ha ha! Take your turn, Kaiba. With pleasure. I'll tap my ring, drawing 4 cards from my deck. So many to choose. I'll play this one. Will, Pact-Bound Duelist, another alchemy card. This steals one of your creatures to attack you, or it would, if you had any. I'll attack and tell you the true power of Will. This card has Specialize. It's a mechanic that can transform it into one of 5 forms to stop anything you could try to do to save yourself. The black one can sacrifice an artifact to...
I don't care.
What?
That is way too much text. I'm not going to try to read it all. Instead, I'll flash in Saiba Siphoner. Like my beloved Dark Magician of Chaos, it adds a spell back from my graveyard to my hand. And I'll choose Bitter Downfall. Ironic, your downfall is so sweet to me. It seems even your will has abandoned you.
Kaiba only has 6 life left. With 4 corruption counters on his One Ring, he'll lose 4 life next turn. I only need 2 damage to win this game.
Yes, but Kaiba has always shown he plays many removal spells. I'm sure he still has a trick up his sleeve.
You're right, but with this card...
I cast Cormella, the Glamour Thief. It has haste, which ignores the summoning sickness of Magic the Gathering. I go to attack with both of my creatures.
I still have plays. I use Cut Down to destroy your Saiba Siphoner.
Very well. But you still take the damage from my Cormella's attack. Your soul has become distorted, Kaiba, and it's about time your life total caught up with the corruption of your One Ring.
No! Not again!
Huh. Who could have guessed that a ring could be such a corrupting object? YouTube! I hope you all enjoyed that. I enjoyed making it, although I probably won't make another like it for a while. It takes a really long time to edit, and even when I think I've got this editing thing down, I try to make some new effect, and it takes an hour or 2 of fiddling around to make it even look passable, and I can only really edit for an hour or 2 a day, so... Anyway, if you want to give me a like, I would greatly appreciate it, give my ego a big boost. I hope you all have a great rest of the day. Toodles! Oh nuts, I forgot to give justification for Magical Scientist Inadagarasu Magical Scientist Cauldron of Eternity because I couldn't think of any parallel for the Etcher deck, and the Cauldron can at least repeatedly summon by paying life. I don't know. Then Yatagarasu was Kolaghan's command because Yada's main purpose in the Chaos deck was as a lock piece by which it could stop your opponent's draw step after you nuke their hand with CED. K-Command is the only instant speed discard spell around, so it can be used to force the discard on the draw step, so it's like they never do at all. Additionally, it's possible to continuously force the discard every turn, just like Yada did by using the other mode of K-Command to loop 2 Cormellas and discard every card in your opponent's draw step. Okay, that's everything for real this time. Doodles!